Imagine your entire city shutting down in seconds, and all it took was one faulty, low-cost node.
Your smart home, traffic lights, and hospital infrastructure are only as strong as their weakest link, and this failure proves how vulnerable our modern smart cities really are. Before the next blackout happens, you need to understand how mundane oversights can cause technological disasters.
$1 billion vaporized in 0.4 seconds, 12 million residents, 300 level 1 trauma centers, all of it zeroed out because the physics decided to collect a debt. The grid didn't just trip Elena, it didn't just stumble, it committed suicide.
Stop romanticizing the collapse. Mark, look at the ticker. It's not just a blackout, it's a liquidity event. The Aethelgard Mercantile Exchange froze mid-trade. Do you understand what happens when high-frequency trading algorithms lose connection for 3 seconds, let alone 3 hours? We are looking at a localized recession that started 45 seconds ago. The Port Authority just signaled a total logistical halt. That is $42 million of cargo rotting on the cranes every single hour this stays down.
The cranes are the least of your problems. You're looking at the money. Look at the mechanics. At 9:02 p.m., the main bus at substation Alpha 9 reported a catastrophic voltage excursion. We are talking 50 kilovolts above the insulation rating. Physically, that shouldn't just trip a breaker. That kind of energy turns copper bus bars into shrapnel. It creates an arc flash hot enough to blind anyone within 100 yards and vaporize the concrete floor. The automated defense system saw that number, panicked, and executed a hard sever. It slammed the door on a gigawatt of moving energy.
And that is why the redundant systems should have caught it. We paid $300 million for the resilient grid upgrade. The mayor sold it as the unblinking eye of the city. If Alpha 9 goes down, Beta 4 and Gamma 2 are supposed to shoulder the load instantly. That was the contract. That was the guarantee. So why am I getting reports that Beta 4 is offline? Why is the entire eastern seaboard dark? If the system worked, we should have seen a flicker, not an apocalypse.
Because energy has inertia. You can't just stop a freight train by putting a brick on the tracks. You derail the train. When Alpha 9 cut the line, that current had momentum. Inductance. The magnetic fields collapse, and the voltage spikes backward. A massive back EMF wave. The smart system at Beta 4 didn't see a neighbor in distress. It saw a viral attack. It saw a massive surge coming down the line and interpreted it as a contagion. To save itself, Beta 4 disconnected. Then Gamma 2 followed. It was a domino effect of self-preservation. The grid killed the city to save the transformers.
It prioritized hardware assets over human life and economic stability. That is negligence written into the code. But here is the part that makes me want to scream. Mark, I am looking at the telemetry data from Alpha 9 right before the cut. I'm looking for the explosion. I'm looking for the bomb, the lightning strike, the sabotage. There is nothing. The external sensors show calm weather. The load was nominal. There was no physical reason for Alpha 9 to scream, fire.
That's the beauty of the horror. The physics was a lie. The 50 kilovolt spike that triggered this cascade, it never happened on the line. It happened inside the monitoring circuit. The grid reacted to a ghost. We didn't lose the city to a disaster. We lost it to a hallucination. Something inside that substation told the central AI that the world was ending, and the AI believed it without checking a second source.
I'm pulling the procurement manifests for Alpha 9. This facility was retrofitted 6 months ago, state-of-the-art. They said we were billed for military-grade sensing equipment. Wait, this Q number doesn't match the invoice. The manifest lists a Honeywell industrial voltage monitor, rated for extreme thermal variance, but the maintenance logs. The logs show a replacement part installed during the last audit, a Model X7 general-purpose sensor.
Model X7. You're joking. That's consumer-grade trash. That's the kind of sensor you put in a smart toaster to make sure you don't burn your bagel. It has a plastic housing. It uses an electrolytic capacitor instead of a ceramic one. Do you know what happens to cheap electrolytic capacitors when you put them next to a high-voltage transformer? They dry out. The heat cooks them.
They drift. The calibration slips.
Exactly. For weeks, that $10 piece of plastic has been slowly increasing its voltage reading as it degraded. It was telling the AI, voltage is rising. When the voltage was flat, it was a slow-motion lie. The AI categorized it as acceptable noise until tonight, when the drift finally crossed the red line. The sensor screamed surge because it was dying, not because the grid was failing.
So let me get this straight. We didn't get hit by a cyberattack. We didn't get hit by a solar flare. We are sitting in the dark, bleeding millions of dollars a minute because a subcontractor saved $40 by swapping a vital industrial component for a piece of e-waste.
$10? The wholesale cost is $10. The entire smart city, the billions in infrastructure, the AI oversight, it all hinged on a $10 weak link that wasn't even rated to be in the room. The system is so complex it's fragile, Elena. The AI trusted the sensor more than it trusted the reality of the grid. And now, nobody can turn the lights back on, because the software is convinced that turning the power on means blowing up the city. We are locked out by our own safety protocols.
I have the technical manual for the Model X7 open on the main server. It's worse than you said. This isn't just a consumer sensor, it's an indoor consumer sensor. Operating range, 0 to 40 degrees Celsius. Do you know what the ambient temperature inside a substation enclosure gets to during peak load in July? 60s? 70s? We've been baking this component in an industrial oven for 6 months.
And that heat accelerates the chemistry. That's the physics of failure. Alina, the Arrhenius equation dictates that for every 10-degree rise in temperature, the reaction rate doubles. Inside that cheap capacitor, the liquid electrolyte was boiling off, microevaporation. As the fluid volume drops, the equivalent series resistance, the ESR, spikes. The capacitor stops acting like a storage tank and starts acting like a resistor. It introduces noise, dirty, chaotic signal noise into a system designed for pure sine waves.
But the central dashboard showed all systems green until 9:02 p.m. I'm looking at the archived reports, daily checks, weekly audits, green, green, green. If this thing was rotting from the inside out for months, generating noise, why didn't the predictive analytics catch it? We pay a licensing fee of $12 million a year for predictive fault detection. The AI claims to spot a loose screw from the vibration pattern. How did it miss a sensor dying of heat stroke?
Because the AI was told to be polite. It's the smoothing algorithm. Raw voltage data is messy. It fluctuates. If you showed a human operator the raw feed, they'd panic. So the system engineers put in a filter, a moving average logic. When the sensors started spitting out noise because the capacitor was drying out, the software looked at the data and said, that's just interference. It smoothed the line. It mathematically erased the symptoms to present a clean, stable graph to the control room.
So the $12 million software was actively hiding the evidence. It sanitized the data until the patient was already dead. That's not engineering. That's fraud. We were making decisions based on a curated reality. The grid was screaming for help, and the interface was putting a mute button on it to keep the dashboard looking pretty for the investors.
It's standard practice in IoT design. Prioritize user experience over raw fidelity. But here is where the kinetic reality kicks in. Eventually, the capacitor failed completely. Open circuit. The voltage divider network inside the sensor collapsed. Suddenly, the 5 volts reference signal gets dumped directly into the signal line. The reading didn't drift anymore. It teleported. The system went from seeing 110% load, which it smoothed down to 100%, to seeing 500% load in a nanosecond.
And that's the trigger point. 9:02 p.m., the vaporization reading.
Correct. The AI dropped the smoothing filter because the value exceeded the catastrophic threshold. It panicked. Now look at the physical response. Substation Alpha 9 uses sulfur hexafluoride, SF6, circuit breakers. These are massive pressurized tanks designed to quench arcs. When the command came to cut the power, those breakers fired like cannons. That's a mechanical violence. The contacts separate at supersonic speeds. The arc that forms is hotter than the surface of the sun, and the gas blasts it out. It's a violent, traumatic event for the hardware.
And now we can't reset them. I have the field operations manager on the other line. He's standing outside Alpha 9 with a manual override key. He says the electronic lock on the perimeter fence is disengaged. But the physical solenoid on the door is jammed. He can't get in. He's asking for permission to cut the door with a torch.
Do not let him touch that door. If he cuts that door, he dies. The system hasn't just locked the door, it has energized the frame ground. The AI believes there is a massive fault inside. To protect the external grid, it has engaged the grounding switches. If the sensor is still reporting 500% voltage, which it is because it's broken, the system assumes the air inside the room is ionized. It thinks the room is a bomb. If he bridges the gap with a torch, he becomes the path to ground.
So we are locked in a standoff. The sensor says the room is deadly. The room is actually cold and silent. The technicians know it's safe, but the safety protocols are designed to assume humans are idiots. We built a system that trusts a $10 chip more than it trusts a certified engineer with a multimeter.
It's the Internet of Things paradox. We removed the human loop to eliminate human error. In doing so, we removed human judgment. A human operator looks at that sensor reading and sees sensor failure. The AI looks at that reading and sees apocalypse. And since the AI controls the physical locks, the apocalypse is the reality we have to live in. The system is protecting us from a phantom, and it's willing to starve the city of power to do it.
We need a workaround. Can we bypass the Alpha 9 controller from the central hub? Tell the main server to ignore the sensor data and force a remote close on the breakers?
You can try, but the latency is your enemy. The central server is in the cloud. Alpha 9 is on the edge. The edge protocol has safety priority. Even if you send a force close command, the local controller at the substation will reject it because its local inputs say danger. It's a mutiny. Elena, the dumbest part of the system has seized command from the smartest part. The $10 sensor is the captain of the ship now.
So we are paralyzed, but Alpha 9 is just one node. It handles 15% of the downtown load. The blackout map on the wall isn't showing a 15% drop, it's showing 100% total system collapse. Aethelgard is dark, from the industrial district to the residential hills. Even if Alpha 9 is locked down, the redundancy protocols were designed to island the fault. Beta 4 and Gamma 2 should be picking up the slack. They are independent systems. Why are they offline?
They were independent until the firmware update last November. The unified grid patch. The engineers wanted the substations to talk to each other to optimize load balancing, peer-to-peer communication. It sounds great in a brochure. In practice, it meant that when Alpha 9 screamed, the other substations heard it, and they didn't just hear fault, they heard contagion.
Define contagion in a hardwired system. Electricity isn't a virus. It doesn't infect.
The algorithm thinks it does. When Alpha 9 cut its connection, that gigawatt of demand didn't vanish. It tried to flow instantly to the path of least resistance, Beta 4. So at millisecond 0, Alpha 9 reports a catastrophic high-voltage event. At millisecond 1, Beta 4 sees a massive, violent spike in current demand. The central AI correlated the two events. It concluded that the high voltage at Alpha 9 was traveling down the line to Beta 4. It interpreted the load shift as a fault propagation.
Sympathetic tripping. The AI thought the fire was spreading, so it burned down the fire breaks.
It didn't just burn them, it nuked them. The AI issued a level 5 containing command that's a protocol designed for physical attacks or massive solar storms. It commands every substation within a 10-mile radius to decouple from the grid and ground out. It's the scorched earth defense. To save the equipment from a theoretical surge that never existed, the system intentionally blacked out the entire city. It killed the patient to prevent a cold.
And the cost of that defense is currently exceeding the value of the equipment it saved. I'm looking at the liability causes. The SLA, service level agreement, with the hospital network guarantees 99.999% uptime. We just breached that. The penalties activate at minute 15. We are at minute 45. The city is now legally liable for every spoiled vaccine, every halted surgery, every minute of downtime in the automated logistics centers. We saved a few million in transformers and lost $1 billion in economic activity.
It gets darker, because the grid is now dark start capable only. We can't just flip a switch to turn it back on. The generators have to be synchronized manually. We need to send crews to 20 different locations to physically crank engines because the remote SCADA system is still locked in containment mode. The software refuses to believe the threat is gone because the Model X7 sensor at Alpha 9 is still reporting false data. It's a zombie signal.
Then we kill the signal, not with code, with cutters. I'm authorizing the field operations manager to bypass the safety lockout. Tell him to ignore the arc flash warning on the door.
You're asking him to bet his life against a red LED. If he opens that door and the sensor is right, he vaporizes. If the sensor is wrong, he saves the city.
The sensor is a $10 liar. Mark, you said it yourself. The physics don't match the data. The thermal logs prove the capacitor failure. I am betting his life on your physics. Send the order. Physical override. Sever the sensor lead. Hard reset.
Order sent. He's breaching the perimeter. He's at the control cabinet. He's cutting the low-voltage harness to the Model X7. Beat the reading is gone. Alpha 9 is reporting no data instead of critical surge. The central AI just switched from red alert to sensor malfunction. The containment protocol is lifting. Beta 4 is handshaking with the grid.
Lights. I see lights on the dashboard. The Port Authority is coming back online. The ticker on the exchange just moved.
We're back, but don't celebrate. We just proved that the most dangerous thing in a smart city isn't a hacker or a hurricane, it's the illusion of connectivity. We wired the city's nervous system together, but we gave it the brain of a paranoid schizophrenic. Today it was a voltage sensor. Tomorrow, maybe a smart water valve thinks the reservoir is poisoned and shuts off the aqueduct. Maybe a traffic algorithm thinks a bridge is collapsing and gridlocks the ambulances.
We prioritize smart over robust. We built a glass cannon. I'm scrubbing the vendor list tonight. Any component that isn't industrial grade, analog verified, and air-gapped from the critical logic gets ripped out. I don't care if it costs 10 times as much. We are done with the $10 economy.
It won't matter. You can replace the sensors, but you can't replace the philosophy. As long as we let algorithms make life or death decisions based on single points of data, we are just waiting for the next ghost to scare the machine into suicide. The blackout is over, Elena. But the fragility, that's just getting started.